Once upon a time, in a quiet village called Kuru, everything seemed peaceful and perfect from the outside. The village was surrounded by tall, lush trees, and the people lived simple, happy lives. But beneath that calm surface, there was a strict rule that everyone followed without question. It was a rule that defined honor, respect, and identity in the village. Every girl in Kuru was expected to remain pure, untouched until marriage. This wasn't just a tradition, it was a matter of pride. Parents believed in it deeply and often boasted about it, saying things like, "My daughter is pure, just like every girl in this village." For them, it was proof of good upbringing and respect for their customs. But what they didn't know was that this belief was about to be shattered. One day, something unexpected happened. A strange misfortune began to fall over the village. Crops started failing, illness spread, and fear slowly replaced peace. The elders, desperate for a solution, made a shocking announcement. They declared that the curse could only be lifted by a true virgin. And not only that, the girl who proved herself pure would marry the prince, and her family would be rewarded with wealth and honor beyond imagination. Suddenly, this became more than just a test, it became a race. Every parent, filled with confidence, rushed to present their daughters, fully believing they would pass without any doubt. As the crowd gathered, a man named Abaj stepped forward holding a large pot. The entire village fell silent as he spoke with authority. "Inside this pot is a sacred necklace, blessed by the gods. Only a true virgin can take it out." The tension in the air grew heavy. One by one, the girls stepped forward. Nervous hands reached into the pot and came out empty. The first girl failed. Then the second. Then another. With each failure, whispers began to spread through the crowd. Something didn't feel right. Then came the chief's daughters, known for their beauty, grace, and discipline. If anyone could pass this test, it had to be them. The first daughter stepped forward confidently, but she too came out empty-handed. The second tried, and failed. Finally, the youngest daughter approached, her hands trembling as she reached inside. The entire village held its breath. But when she pulled her hand out, it was empty. Silence took over the crowd. Then suddenly, whispers turned into shock. How is this possible? Not even the chief's daughters? The elders exchanged worried glances. Everything they believed in, everything they were proud of, now felt like a lie. Panic started spreading. The girls began shouting defensively, "It's not our fault, it's Isaim." The name echoed across the crowd like a spark in dry grass. Isaim, the outsider, the girl from the city. The villagers quickly turned their anger toward her. "She came here and ruined everything," one woman muttered. "Our daughters were different before she arrived," another added. Blame grew stronger with every passing second. But the truth was far more complicated, and far more disturbing than they realized. Because this story didn't begin with the curse. It began the day Isaim entered the village. She came to Kuru to visit her aunt, but from the moment she arrived, she stood out. She dressed differently, bold, eye-catching clothes that no one in the village had ever seen before. She walked with confidence, like she didn't fear anyone or anything. And naturally, people noticed. The men whispered as she passed by, unable to take their eyes off her. But it wasn't just the men, the village girls watched her too, not with judgment, but with admiration. "I wish I could dress like her," one girl whispered. "She looks so confident and beautiful," another said. To them, Isaim wasn't a bad influence, she was someone they wanted to become. They didn't know much about her, but they were fascinated by her lifestyle, her confidence, and the attention she received. Slowly, curiosity began to grow. They wondered what it would feel like to live like her, to be admired like her. But what they didn't know was that Isaim was hiding a dangerous secret. The gifts she always had, the money she carried, it wasn't random. Isaim had been secretly meeting men in hidden places. And in exchange for their attention and gifts, she was giving them something the village strictly forbade. No one knew until one day, the chief's daughter, Ashabi, became suspicious. Isaim always had new things, and it didn't make sense. So Ashabi decided to follow her quietly. What she saw changed everything. Hidden away from the village, Isaim met a man. They spoke briefly, and soon after, Isaim walked away with a small bag of money. Ashabi's heart started racing. So this is her secret, she thought. At first, she was shocked. But then, curiosity took over. The next day, when a young merchant showed interest in her, Ashabi made a bold decision. She tried the same thing. And it worked. She received gifts. Money. Attention. It felt easy, almost too easy. Why not, she thought. But she had no idea that this one decision would start a chain reaction that could never be stopped. Ashabi couldn't keep this discovery to herself. She told her friends everything, Isaim's secret, how simple it was, how rewarding it felt. At first, they were shocked. Then curious. And soon, they followed her. More girls in the village began to change. They dressed differently, acted differently, and started seeking the same attention. They told themselves, if Isaim and Ashabi can do it, why can't we? What started as curiosity slowly turned into a habit. Isaim noticed this change, and instead of stopping it, she saw an opportunity. She began organizing secret meetings between the girls and the men, taking a share of the gifts and money. I'll handle everything, she told them. You just have to be nice. The girls trusted her. They enjoyed the attention, the gifts, and the new lifestyle. It made them feel powerful, special, something they had never experienced before. Slowly, they began to forget everything they were taught. The traditions, the values, the rules that once defined them, all started fading away. What they thought was harmless fun was actually turning into something much bigger. A secret began spreading through the village, quiet, hidden, but dangerous. And without realizing it, they were walking straight toward the moment that would expose everything. As time passed, more and more girls in the village began joining Isaim's secret meetings with the men. What started as a few curious girls chasing gifts slowly turned into something much bigger, something dangerous. It was no longer just about money or presents. The girls began to crave the attention, the thrill, the feeling of being admired. That excitement became addictive. They felt seen, desired, powerful, and that feeling slowly replaced everything they had once believed in. Meanwhile, the elders and parents remained completely unaware. They continued their daily lives, proudly believing their traditions were still intact. They spoke often about purity, respect, and honor, assuming the girls were listening, assuming nothing had changed. But behind their backs, everything had already fallen apart. The girls played their roles perfectly. In front of their families, they acted innocent, attending village gatherings, helping with chores, smiling like nothing was wrong. But in secret, they were living a completely different life, one that went against everything the village stood for. What was once considered forbidden had now become normal. The shame that once existed disappeared, replaced by excitement and freedom. Slowly, silently, the strong traditions of Kuru began to collapse, and no one noticed. Then, one day, everything took a dark turn. A strange disaster struck the village. Plants began to dry up, their leaves turning brown and lifeless. Animals that once roamed full of energy started falling sick and dying. But the worst was yet to come. The villagers themselves began to suffer. People fell ill with symptoms no one had ever seen before. Fear spread like wildfire. Confusion, panic, and helplessness took over the once peaceful village. Desperate for answers, the villagers turned to the only person they believed could understand what was happening, the oracle, Agbaji. Known for his deep connection to the spiritual world, he was their last hope. The villagers gathered at his home, their faces filled with fear. The elders spoke, explaining the suffering, begging for guidance. Agbaji listened silently, his eyes closed, as if searching for something beyond this world. Then, after a long pause, he finally spoke, and his words sent chills through everyone. "The gods are angry," he said in a heavy voice. "The traditions have been broken. The purity that once protected this village is gone." A deep silence followed. No one dared to speak. Then he continued, "To calm the gods, a great sacrifice must be made. 2 true virgin maidens must carry the offering to the sacred altar." The villagers were stunned. The idea of sacrifice was terrifying, but what shook them even more was the mention of true virgins. For the first time, doubt entered their hearts. They had always believed their daughters were pure, but now, they weren't so sure. Egbaji's voice grew more urgent. "You have only 2 days. If the sacrifice is not made, the curse will grow stronger, and the suffering will worsen." Fear tightened its grip on the village. The next morning, the town crier walked through the streets, ringing his bell loudly. "All young maidens, come to the palace," he shouted again and again. His voice echoed through every corner of the village. Families rushed to prepare, knowing this was about the sacrifice. By the following day, all the girls stood at the palace, alongside their parents. The air was heavy with tension. Then the test was performed again, the same sacred pot, the same condition. One by one, the girls tried. And once again, every single one failed. A horrifying truth revealed itself: not a single girl in Kuru was a virgin anymore. And just like that, everything collapsed. In the present, Egbaji's voice broke the silence, deep and serious. "The gods see everything," he said. "We must continue the search. Without the sacrifice, this curse will never end." The villagers stood frozen, overwhelmed by the reality. The pride they once held so dearly was gone. The daughters they trusted had failed. Now, they faced a terrifying truth: finding even one pure maiden seemed impossible. And as expected, the blame found its target. Isaim. The villagers turned against her completely. To them, she was no longer just an outsider, she was the reason behind their destruction. Step by step. Through the same village that once admired her. Now filled with silence, judgment, and something even darker. And deep down, she knew this journey wouldn't just test her strength. It would decide her fate. As the people's whispers faded behind her, Isaim stepped into the dense forest, and for the first time, she truly felt alone. The towering trees seemed to close in around her, their shadows stretching across the narrow path as if the forest itself was watching. The journey quickly became difficult. For 2 days, she walked without rest, her feet sore, her body weak, and her heart heavier with every step. With each moment of silence, her thoughts grew louder. She remembered the attention, the admiration, the excitement that once made her feel powerful. She remembered how the village girls looked up to her, how they wanted to become like her. But now, all of it felt empty. Meaningless. That same attention had led them all away from the values that once protected them. Tears rolled down her face as she kept walking. She finally understood the damage she had caused, not just to herself, but to an entire village. For the first time, she truly faced the consequences of her actions, and it broke her. At last, exhausted and trembling, Isaim reached the sacred altar hidden deep within the forest. With shaking hands, she placed the calabash on the altar and slowly fell to her knees. Her voice cracked as she cried out to the gods, begging for forgiveness. She prayed not for herself, but for the village. She begged for the curse to be lifted, for the suffering to end. In that moment, she felt the full weight of her mistakes, the pain, the loss, the destruction. It all came crashing down on her. And yet, as she stood back up, something inside her changed. A quiet acceptance settled in her heart. She knew she couldn't undo the past, but she could face what came next. Even if it meant losing everything she once had. When Isaim finally returned to Kuru, something felt different. The air itself seemed lighter. The villagers gathered, watching her closely, some with relief, others still filled with anger. Slowly, signs of life began to return. The plants that had dried up started to bloom again. The animals regained their strength. The sickness faded. The curse was gone. But Isim's punishment had only just begun. The elders stepped forward, and Igbaji spoke with a firm, echoing voice, "The gods have accepted the sacrifice. The curse is lifted. But Isim must face the consequences of her actions." The crowd fell silent. For the next 12 years, she will not leave this village. She will serve the gods, carrying every sacrifice alone. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Though they were relieved, the resentment remained. From that day on, Isim was given a small hut near the shrine, far from the rest of the village. She lived in isolation, avoided by everyone. No smiles. No conversations. Just silence. Every day, she fulfilled her duty, carrying offerings to the altar, maintaining the shrine, and living with the weight of her past. The once vibrant, confident girl was gone. In her place stood someone quiet, broken, and burdened by regret. Meanwhile, the village worked to rebuild what had been lost. Traditions were reinforced stronger than ever. The elders made a strict decision: no outsider, especially from the city, would ever be allowed into Kuru again. They believed this would protect them from repeating the same mistake. Isim's story became more than just a memory, it became a warning. Parents told their children about the girl who came from the city and changed everything. They spoke of the importance of respect, discipline, and the danger of losing one's values. Her name became a lesson whispered through generations. For 12 long years, Isim lived with her punishment. But more than that, she lived with understanding. She realized that true worth doesn't come from attention or admiration, it comes from character, from choices, from respecting what truly matters. Her journey wasn't just about punishment, it was about transformation. As time passed, the village slowly healed, but the memory never faded. Isim's story remained, not just as a tragedy, but as a powerful reminder. A reminder of how easily things can fall apart, and how costly it can be to forget who you are. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real lesson all along. I hope you enjoyed this story. If it made you think, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful and thought-provoking stories just like this. Thank you.